Well, good morning to our friends on the West Coast, and good afternoon to our friends on the East Coast. And in fact, I'm getting so ahead of myself here. I forgot to even make sure to pronounce your name right. So I'm going to have to just go Peter Giloli. Is that right?
Galooly. So
Giloli.
close.
Man, I swear. See, that's what happens when you click that live button. You just click that button. There's no going
I should have changed when I had the chance.
Well, you are the CEO of the wellness company, and it's so important the work that you guys are doing, especially in the aftermath of everything we saw in the COVID tyranny. And this is really why I wanted to do this show. It's why you wanted to start your company. And I want to start the conversation with you today with something that you have. If you guys follow him on X, by the way, he's reposting all kinds of very important health information there at Peter Giloli on X. You have this in your bio. It says, don't bother trying to fix a broken healthcare system. I think that hits a lot harder today than it did just 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. But even just 6 months ago, as people are starting to see that their healthcare costs are skyrocketing, not going up a couple percentage points, we're talking about for some people, it's doubling and more. So there's a whole litany of things we can get into with the broken healthcare system. But that's what it is. It's a broken healthcare system. Where did it start? How did we get to this point where maybe a couple cracks turned into an entire system being broken, Peter?
It's a really long story. And I mean, if you want to start at the beginning, you can go all the way back to the Flexner report that Rockefeller funded way back in the
Keep hearing
20s.
that name, man. Every time I feel like that name,
I know it's a strange coincidence, right?
isn't it?
But effectively, prior to the 1920s, health and wellness in America had a wide variety of disciplines, right? There was the allopathic healthcare that you and I are familiar with today, the pharmaceuticals. There was chiropractic practices. There was a robust holistic medicine dimension to healthcare in America. But the Flexner report really discredited all of those non allopathic treatment routes and kind of set the stage for the federalization of healthcare in the United States. And as you're well aware of, once something kind of becomes entrenched in the federal government, it's really hard to uproot. And we've just kind of seen that snowball really over the last century. If we really want to talk specifically about what happened lately, I think the one silver lining from the pandemic was that people actually woke up. And for the first time in a generation, actually sat back and said, look, maybe these other types of healthcare, these holistic practices, maybe that's not this kind of woo-woo medicine like I've been told. And maybe that, sleepy general practitioner that I've been seeing for the last 40 years and not questioning a single thing that they told me, maybe that guy really doesn't know it all, right? Maybe he doesn't have to recommend all these vaccines. Did he actually do his research? And I think that's been a really big, big genesis moment for us as a society, but also was one of the key reasons why the wellness company came to be.
You said a key word there, allopathic. Now, when you talk about allopathic and the different types of remedies or medical practices out there, and then you weigh it against what the healthcare system, or let's say the establishment system, is doing, or just the system at large, do we start to understand why it is breaking? Do we start to understand why it is so broken? And how much of it really just comes down to money? How much of it comes down to the bottom line is they've turned it into a profit-driven industry?
That's exactly it, right? And the first thing that people always ask is, how did we get here? And the answer is follow the money, right? You look at the kind of modern healthcare industrial complex, if you want to call it that. And look, I don't think allopathic medicine is inherently good or bad, right? I think there's plenty of evidence that we've designed medications over the years that have really, really helped people. But on that same token, I struggle to find one chronic disease that has been cured in the last 25 years. We see all the commercials on TV. You turn on a football game or the news or whatever, you're going to see drug commercial after drug commercial, a mile long list of side effects, but they don't actually cure anything. They all help to manage something, right? And we're in this chronic management mode, and that's really become healthcare in America. These pharmaceutical companies are developing these drugs. They spend $1 billion to do so. They get the patents that last 20 to 30 years. their buddies in the FDA who, by the way, are former executives at these companies that, take a little detour out of their corporate careers to move up the ladder and get another line on their resume at the FDA, are pushing these things out because they're cash cows. And they know that if they cure a disease, that patient's not coming back, right? Because they're better. But if they can manage a disease and put you on a chronic medication regime, that's a big, big win for their bottom line. And that's really what it comes down to. I saw a crazy stat this morning, actually. I think it was in the Wall Street Journal about over medication. 1 in 6 seniors are considered over medicated on 5 or more chronic medications at once. Now, who's even checking, Owen, whether or not these medications are playing nice with one another? Who knows? I can guarantee you that the doctors and specialists aren't talking well together. Doctors half the time don't even know when their patient got checked into the emergency room, never mind what other medications are on. So this problem has really just kind of ballooned, and we've been honestly kind of complacent in letting it happen.
You're listening to Ask the Doctor here, brought to you by the Wellness Company. Visit twc.health/Owen for more information. We will have more information on that coming up for you shortly. You said something. Now, this is like a pet peeve of mine in like every industry. And you said, we're not actually curing anything, or you could say fixing anything, however you want to put it. But that's the story here. And whether it's with politics or healthcare or anything else, really, it seems like in the modern day, it seems like we're stuck on this hamster wheel, right? And we have a bunch of people looking or talking about solutions, but we're still stuck on the same hamster wheel. And it's like, what does it take? And of course, the team of doctors over there at the Wellness Company, they kind of poked their head out of the hamster wheel and said, wait a second. They poked their head out and they said, hold on a minute here, especially during the COVID tyranny. And it's just like, it's so frustrating to me. We have all of these different things that we know we're not going anywhere. Like, we're not actually getting anywhere. Why do we keep doing the same thing? It's the definition of insanity. And we've seen so much of that in healthcare. I do feel like we're at a breaking point right now, though, Peter. I feel like we're at a breaking point, especially now that people are getting their new bill, their new healthcare bill in the mail, and they're looking at it and they're saying, what is an alternative option, right? This can't be my only option. There's no way I'm going to have to sit here and choose to either completely go broke or have no healthcare at all. But that's the impending doom a lot of Americans feel like they're about to face here in just a couple weeks.
Right. Well, let me ask you this, Owen. If you needed to change the windshield washer fluid in your car, or even if you got a scratch or a minor fender bender, would you use your car insurance for that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess if they would pay for the whole thing and not bother me, maybe, but it seems like that's probably not the case.
Well, that's the health insurance industry, right? Any minor, checkup, any little concern, you go straight to health insurance, and that just drives up cost. And that's the other part of the problem here, right? You talked about people's health insurance bills. We have gotten dependent on health insurance as our medium of care. And that's really the issue. We're just driving up the cost because we're literally using it for the smallest problems in our lives. And there's much, much better ways to handle these things. It requires a little courage, I'll admit. Most people are clinging to their health insurance like a safety blanket, and it's there for catastrophes. But if you think about it, you really want to use your health insurance only for catastrophes, because there's a bunch of different better ways that you can kind of care for yourself outside of that. That's why these catastrophic plans exist that aren't very popular with Americans, but they save a ton of money, and they really allow you to plan for the worst case scenarios, the car accidents, the cancer diagnoses, while the minor things you can handle yourself. And I think if you actually do the math and net it out over the course of a couple of years, you might actually come ahead.
Well, and I think a lot of people might start looking at that angle precisely when, I mean, I don't know if you've been seeing it, I'm sure you have, as the premiums are about to skyrocket. A lot of Americans that are already kind of on a tight budget, they're looking at this and they're just shaking their head and they're saying, I have to find another option, or do I have to go back and weigh the cost benefits? Or like you said, if I just did it in a different route and didn't go through these insurance companies at all, what would that look like? These are all questions I think they're going to be on a lot of Americans' plates coming up here very soon, especially if they can't do anything about these insurance rates going down. You also said something, and I swear it was like I was in the twilight zone. And I mean, I suppose you take anything when you're federally incarcerated. I suppose you take anything with a grain of salt. But I was stunned when I was serving my sentence. And to be clear with people, I was a political speech prisoner. I'm not a criminal. Let's just be clear here. But when I was serving my sentence, I actually met a lot of doctors that were in there. And I heard about this issue. In fact, there were two doctors specifically, and they showed me all of their evidence because I'm like, I'm a little skeptical here. And they said, here you go. They showed me all their evidence. They were actually, there would be doctors that would refuse to over medicate patients. They would refuse to over medicate them specifically for the exact reason that you just said. They'd say, hey, I've got a patient with a heart problem here. Now it's being recommended they get prescribed this. It's bad for the heart, and then it's bad for this other medication. You know how it is. Well, they end up getting put in prison for medical malpractice. I met two of them. One of them actually won in Supreme Court and got released. The other one was still there when I left. And I'm hearing this stuff, and I'm like, there's no way that this is happening. And their theory, of course, was that the insurance companies have so much power over the entire practice that if you're not going to push every single pill that they want you to push, they find a way to push you into jail and shut you up and intimidate you. Have you ever heard about this before? It was the first I'd ever heard.
It's actually maybe a little worse than that, Owen. And think about this for a second. So when you go to the doctor's office with a problem, the generic solution, the out of the box solution, is to prescribe you something, right? And if the doctor does that, whether or not what they actually recommend works, they have a written record in the medical systems and to the insurance companies and their malpractice insurance company, which covers their practice, that they did something in the patient's best interest. They tried their best. However, if you go to the doctors and say, Doc, I'm on these 5 meds, I want to get off them, that's a very different proposition. Because if they're taking you off medication and then something happens to you, you have a heart attack, you have a blood sugar spike, something terrible happens to your health, they're now liable. There's a completely different level of risk that the malpractice insurance companies associate with deprescribing patients versus prescribing them. Prescribing them and doing best by the patient. Deprescribing, all bets are off. And that's why you see the medication regimes that people take only balloon over time, because no doctor is going to go in there and question somebody else's old diagnosis or prescription. They're going to say, well, we just need to supplement that with one more thing, right? And that's why we just see these medical costs continue to grow in these, prescription plates that people take every morning with 20 something different pills.
Well, and you talked about let's say, the exchange between the private sector, the public sector. It seems to kind of be this merry-go-round. We've seen it in a bunch of different industries. I think one in particular, you look at the FDA, you look at Monsanto, but you get back into the healthcare of it. Why isn't there more of a guardrail as far as that is concerned? Because you don't really hear much about that. You don't really hear much about, hey, let's make sure that the private interests can't get inside of the public sector, and all of a sudden we're prioritizing profit over healthcare, because it does seem that is the case now. Why haven't there been guardrails put up, or are they there and they just get ignored?
I don't think they're there. Just like how the financial industry self-regulates out of convenience and the government allows that to happen. Same thing happens in the pharmaceutical industry. And look, Owen, you know better than anybody that effectively America has a fourth branch of government, the agencies, right? These are unelected agencies that we don't vote for. I don't think 9 out of 10 Americans could name the head of the FDA. Even under a Bobby Kennedy-led HHS, they can't name the head of the FDA, right? That person is making a tremendous amount of decisions that will affect your health every single day, but we don't know who they are. We have no say in picking them. We don't know anything about their background. We don't know anything about their beliefs. And these people, and there's an army more of them that staff all different functions in the HHS, FDA, CDC. All of these people usually have deep industry background, deep industry connections, and that's who they talk to. They don't talk to the Americans at the end of the chain that their lives are actually affecting. They're just looking at the numbers that are given to them by a pharmaceutical company, which says, hey guys, we did this trial and it shows a 5% improvement in whatever we're measuring. That's the issue. The other thing, and I think that example also teases to it, Americans aren't taught the difference between absolute and relative risk. And honestly, it's BS. People need to know this, because when you're in the hospital, you're making healthcare decisions, you're usually making those decisions under duress, right? You don't usually feel great. So you're pressured to say something. Now, when you're in the hospital, I'll tell a story that's a good friend of mine. She had just finished chemo for cancer. The doctor said, "Look, you look great. However, we recommend you take this intensive course of radiation and these medications, and it's going to give you a 33% chance higher of mortality in the next 3 years. So, meaning you're going to have a 33% chance of better surviving in the next 3 years. But there's going to be all these side effects." And she said, "Well, if I don't take these drugs, what are the chances that I'm alive in 5 years?" And the doctor said, "Oh, let me look." And 2 minutes later, he came back. The chance that you survive is about 97%. So she was told to take these meds for what amounts to a 1% increase in survival. She had a 97% chance of making it. The drugs, which had all the bad side effects, were only going to help her get 1% more at the probability charts of surviving. But we're throwing out these big numbers and it sounds great, all these improvements, right? But you're not looking at the actual whole picture. And it's not presented that way to you. It's not presented that way in the studies when they approve drugs, and it's not presented to the patients. And that just leads to these very warped conclusions about the efficacy of medications.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've got a real heavy question for you on that deal. I mean, this if I have a heavier question for you on this broadcast, I don't know, I'll have to pull it from the depth. Before we do that, folks, you are with us here on the Ask the Doctor show, brought to you by the Wellness Company. And you're probably going to hear pretty soon about this flu that's going around, ladies and gentlemen. I'm already seeing it. I got the news right here to my left. I'm already seeing them talking about the flu season. The problem is they want you to go take this flu vaccine, which is already ineffective. In fact, it's already ineffective for 2 seasons ago. That's just what you get with the flu vaccine. So what the media won't tell you is what Dr. Peter McCullough and the Wellness Company warned you about weeks ago. We warned you about it with Dr. McCullough right here on this show, actually, that this strain could be more severe, but it will be completely immune to that shot that you're getting. That shot is not going to do anything. That's why we're asking you, and I'm trusting the Wellness Company. They have a 2-step approach. Step 1, prevention through immune defense, nasal and throat sprays. Use daily to help support your body's first line of defense right where viruses enter. Step 2, early treatment through the Contagion Emergency Kit. Physician prescribed antiviral options, including a nebulizer, hydroxychloroquine, and ivermectin. You know, those things that work that they try to keep you from getting. So treatment can start early if you do get sick and you're not stuck in long lines or shelling out big money at urgent care during the holidays. Sounds awful. This isn't fear. It's common sense. Get prepared now at twc.health/Owen. That's twc.health/Owen. And by the way, use promo code Owen and get 10% off. That's promo code Owen, get 10% off. And folks, if you've got, the person in your life, maybe everybody's got a couple in their life, maybe your grandparents or something, they're afraid of getting sick. They kind of buy into the fear mongering. Maybe this is a way you can ease some of those fears and keep them from taking that injection that's not going to do anything good for them, folks. We know that now. So tell them about the Wellness Company. Go visit twc.health/Owen, promo code Owen to get 10% off. Now, here comes the heavy one. And this is, it's a little controversial, but I think that we have to ask these questions. And there's actually some science that's starting to back this. So let me land this plane. We see all of this, I call it propaganda, but we see all of these advertisements and they talk about go get your cancer screening. You mentioned earlier, if you're watching TV over the weekend or maybe over Christmas, a holiday with your family, you're going to see it, right? You're going to see the cancer screening stuff. They do big drives during the football seasons, the basketball seasons to go get these cancer screenings. Well, some doctors, and folks, I'm not giving you any medical advice, but this is my opinion. This is what other doctors are saying. You can look into it for yourself. But some doctors are coming out and they're theorizing that the actual screening process is doing more harm than good. And maybe the reason why we start to see some of these numbers skyrocketing is because you're getting these false positives in these screenings. So I know this is kind of a really heavy thing to tackle here, but it seems like that's part of the mode now. It seems like that's part of the process is anything we can do to get this person in that chair and give them any diagnosis at all that's going to result in a prescription or a new medical cost or a new medical procedure, they're going to do it. And if the cancer screening is the first thing to do it, no matter the side effects, like you just mentioned with your last story, it seems like they'd rather just get you in there to do that screening, whether it's for good or for worse. A little heavy question here, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Many. Let me throw this out there first. There are only two types of drugs, Owen, that doctors receive commission on. Commission, like as in they receive money when the clinic sells these drugs to the insurance company for the patients. Those two types of drugs are vaccines, imagine that, and chemotherapy, cancer. So I'll let you guys interpret what that might mean for the recommendations you get from your doctors. But specific to your question, look, at the end of the day, we have cancer every single day in our bodies. You do, I do, everybody does. Our body naturally has cancer cells that crop up from old cells, and our immune systems are our first line of defense. Your immune system regularly clears out all those malfunctioning cells from the body. It does so every single day with remarkable efficiency. So, the first step in keeping your body strong from cancer is good immune health, period. Nobody's talking about this, but that's just the fact. If you can keep a strong immune system, an immune system that's alert, your body's going to be much more apt to fight whatever cancers are cropping up. Secondly, around testing. Now, I do think that getting regular tests, especially once you get older, is smart. Now, if you're under 40, under 50, we can debate the merits there. It's usually not as effective or as accurate. But don't get just one opinion. If you get a test and it comes back as positive, get a blood test, get a second opinion, talk to somebody else. There is evidence that mammograms may actually be harmful for the body, and there's
That's
some
the
pretty
one
yeah.
that's the one where the doctors are really starting to get a little more vocal about their concerns.
Yeah, mammograms are a bit controversial. I don't know if I would want any of my girls or my wife to go get a mammogram personally. I think there's other ways that you can test for it. You know, simple self examinations and doctor examinations are often effective as well. And there's other new technologies that are like ultrasound based that are far safer and can yield a similar result. So I would do your research before you choose a path forward there if you're a woman who's concerned about breast cancer. But at the end of the day, you know, cancer is a treatable disease. I'll go out there and say it. You know, I think there's been a lot of controversy over the past 20 years because we've always been searching for the cure for cancer. Cancer is a lifestyle thing, most of the time, a vast majority of the time. Now, there is some genetic predisposition. Again, all of these things can be treated, though, or at least managed through different lifestyle interventions, but it starts early. Don't wait until you're in stage 3 before you start doing stuff. It's a daily choice you need to make to keep your body in self healthy. And that goes for any medical condition, Owen. Heart issues, lung issues, right? I mean, it's really one and the same.
Or maybe even oral hygiene, which might be a topic of conversation today. We'll see if we get there. But you bring up the self-examination, and it's like, I can't believe I'm saying this now, but I'm old enough to remember. I'm old enough to remember when that's what was pushed. You know, I'm old enough to remember where if we did see any, and I don't mean this necessarily in a negative way, but if we did see any, propaganda aimed at women to try to raise breast awareness, usually it was the self-examination. That's what they were promoting. And you might even see a commercial on TV. And, if you're a 12-year-old boy and you see a woman massaging her breast, ooh, hee hee, it's kind of funny. That's kind of what I remember. But yet that's what I remember being pushed was the self-examination. You can do it for free. You can do it every day if you want. It's not something that is invasive. It's not something that requires a trip to the doctor's office or even a bill, whether it's small or large. And so you just start to wonder as you watch this stuff evolve over time. It comes back to the same question. I feel like it's on repeat here, but it's true. It's just, it feels like it always comes back to money. It's like, you know what? These women that are examining themselves here, they're not making us any money. But if we bring them in and we squash them up on a mammogram machine, now all of a sudden we're getting a profit out of this.
Yeah. So you mentioned money, and this is a stat that maybe would surprise some of the viewers, or maybe not. I'm not even sure. But if you look at the healthcare spend in America, which, let's face it, it's the largest category of expenditure across everyone and everything in America, whether we're talking government or private individuals. 95% of healthcare spending goes to kind of chronic disease management. 5% goes to preventative care. That's completely backwards, right? If we can flip that script there, you're going to be much more healthier, much more happier. You're going to be saving money overall, and you're not going to be dealing with these kind of emergency crisis moments that we have. A great example is, you're spending thousands of dollars a year on insurance, as we've talked about. It's lifted silently from your paycheck most of the time, so you don't even notice it.
Yeah.
Probably should go check that Jan 1 when the new plans kick in.
Oof.
But we don't do the things that actually can really help, like lab work, right? You can go see your doctor and get your 8-minute physical every year, and he's going to make you a cough and send you on your way, Owen. Let's face it. Does anything really happen in those visits? Probably not, but you're spending a lot of money for them. You
Right.
can spend a couple $100 out of pocket at max, go get a full lab panel at your local Quested LabCorp, and you're going to get readouts on everything that matters, including, if you want, things like cancer markers. These things are widely available now, and that's going to give you a far, far better gauge of your health than any examination at an annual physical ever would.
I forget what it was, because I am somebody. There's all kinds of local labs, especially if you're in a big city. I'm in Austin, Texas, so make your pick, whatever lab you want to go to. But I suppose if you're in a smaller area, you may have less options. My point being, there was a friend of mine who asked me something about some health related question, and I said, "Oh, well, you can figure that out with blood work." I was like, you can just go get blood work done at a local lab, and they were stunned. They were shocked. They were like, "Oh, I need to go. I got to go through the whole process. I got to find a doctor's office. I got to schedule the appointment. I got to line up insurance and all this stuff." I said, literally, I'll give you the lab right now. You'll probably pay $90, and they'll take one draw of blood from you, and they'll give you a whole report on everything you're looking for. And they were shocked. So much of what you just said is educational based, right? So much of what you just said, whether it's the education to know what you have to do to have a strong immune system, to know the life choices, the decisions you're going to make on a day-to-day basis to minimize your risk of a cancer or anything else negative, or just knowing alternative options, whether it's the products that we have at the wellness company, or whether it's saying, okay, I don't need to go through all this rigmarole to go to a doctor. I can just go down the street and get lab work done. I try to do it at least once a year. And people are shocked. It's like they don't even know this stuff. That's what's incredible. They don't even know this stuff. If you're a conspiracy theorist like me, you say it's all by design, right? They want you to be ignorant so that you're making these decisions that make the profit centers even richer. But it really is so educational based. It's like it's almost as if you can get to the individual before the pharmaceutical lobby or the insurance industrial complex. It's like if you can get to the individual before that, then they can make a more informed decision. At least that's been my experience.
That's exactly right. And I think the more the medical establishment can make it seem very complex and convoluted and hard to understand, the more likely you are to outsource maybe every medical decision in your life to some so called expert. In reality, these things are not hard to understand. We see the same thing, by the way, Owen, with many people with retirement planning. How many people are told, "Oh, it's so hard to plan for retirement and stocks and bonds and all this other crap," right? At the end of the day, they end up paying 4% of their bank account to some retirement planner who plugs their money into an account and just sits there and watches it, right? Anytime you're outsourcing your decision making, you're losing power, you're losing control. And the bottom line is there's resources out there. And that's why we made the wellness company, because we wanted to empower people to make their own decisions. We'll give you options. You can go with our options, you can go with another company's options. But the more knowledgeable you are, the more confident you are to own your own health, the more likely you are to actually have a better outcome in the end of the day, rather than waiting for somebody to come along when you're in a panic or a crisis.
Yeah, and I guess maybe the one kicker to that is that you do have to do a little bit of that heavy lifting yourself. You do have to become a little extra informed and extra aware, maybe, but it makes you stronger in the long run. I mean, trust me, I'm somebody that has the fear of needles. I always forget what it's called. I have a fear of needles. If I'm able to go just once a year to get my blood drawn at a lab to get the test results and have them stick that needle in my arm and me almost go into a conniption fit, That's how much I'm willing to endure to avoid the doctor's office and to avoid having to go through insurance. Is I'll do that once a year and nearly faint when I see the needle go in. I have to look the other direction, pretend it's not happening.
Well, we have needleless at-home labs coming next year, Owen. So we'll make sure to
Really?
send you one.
I
Yeah.
didn't know that. Yeah, I think that was an idea right out of my own head.
Look, a lot of people are like you, right? I mean,
Yeah.
injections suck, period, right? And most people need to be pretty desperate to get something put in their arm, right? So we've tried to design everything in the wellness company to not be subcutaneous, to not be injectable. Even people that are on weight loss, do we see all these problems with Ozempic and tirzepatide? Not only do people hate sticking themselves in the abdomen with a needle every single month to hopefully help lose weight, it's painful. It leads to a lot of non-compliance, but also it's frankly dangerous. People don't know how to draw and accurately measure and dose medication when they need to pull their own syringe. So we're trying to get all of that out of the process. We're making everything oral. For blood draws, we literally have a device. You stick it to your arm. It kind of looks like a hockey puck. There's a vial on the bottom. You press the button. Takes about 2 minutes. It'll fill a small vial. Take it off. Painless. Mail it. You're done.
Okay, well, this is breaking news here, folks. You're hearing a major advancement for people like me that never want to see a needle in their life. It looks like the wellness company may save us. By the way, speaking of the alternatives, I know that this is one you guys have been very proud of here, and this is the drop, and this is dealing with the weight loss stuff. Now, I'm not as familiar with this. I have heard some stories. Some of those include injections too, right? Some of these new weight loss deals, don't some of those include injections, or am I mistaken?
Not at the wellness company, but if you go to any other company like Hims or Hers or Row that you see on TV, they're all injectables. Now, we took a different approach to peptides. And to be clear, I think peptides are actually going to be a very, very big part of everyone's lives in the future. They're incredibly safe. They are very potent molecules that can really help the body with a wide variety of mechanisms that traditionally we would have used synthetic drugs to, when we can use peptides, which are these naturally occurring signaling molecules that happen within our own body to stimulate change. So our product Drop, it's a weight loss peptide. The issue with peptides, traditionally when you ingest them orally, is that the body looks at them like meat. It tries to ingest them, right? So you don't get good absorption of peptides, and that's why I think the product is called Rybelsus. It's a Eli Lilly-based semaglutide tablet. That product doesn't really work, and it doesn't really work because people take it orally. The body just digests it, and even though it's an incredibly high dose of semaglutide, you aren't able to actually absorb it. Our special sauce is that we have effectively a proprietary liposomal technology, and that's fancy talk for we encapsulate the peptides in lipids, essentially these fatty molecules. We dissolve them in water. You add the peptide to your water in the morning before you have any meals. You drink it, it'll bypass the GI system and get straight into the small intestine where it can be absorbed. And that's really going to be the future for peptides here at the Wellness Company, is going to be, how can we actually make these easy to take on a daily basis, by the way, at a lower dose than you're going to be injecting yourself in every single week if you're on an injectable. And I think it's going to be a better process, better outcomes, and I think people are going to enjoy it a lot more.
And of course, you can use coupon code Owen to get 10% off of these products as well. And I could go with this. We could talk about the products you guys have for immune defense. When we launched this show a couple months ago, I said, this is what it's all about. This is what it's all about. And while, it might not be the sexiest thing to talk about health once a week, it might not be the most entertaining thing to sit here and talk about alternative treatments. But you know what? If there's one person listening that is going through something and they're weighing their options and they haven't heard of this before, then it's totally worth it. It's worth it to make sure that one person gets this information. And if there would be any doubt in my mind that is the right formula, I just go back to 2020. I just go back to 2020 and the work that I was doing, Dr. Peter McCullough was doing, Dr. Kelly Victory was doing, so much of your team over there that eventually formed the Wellness Company where you guys are at now. I think about how important that was. And it's almost, anytime I talk about mostly healthcare or COVID vaccines, I have at least one person reaching out and they're saying, Owen, if it wasn't for the coverage that you were doing, if it wasn't for the doctors that you were talking to that have now formed the wellness company, I don't know what we would have done. I don't know what we would have done. I don't know what we would have done with my daughter or my mom. And there's all these stories, and it's just that kind of, it's that subtle reminder that it's very important that people get to hear all sides of the spectrum when it comes to healthcare. It's very important that people know there are other options, because like you said earlier, there is a lot of pressure and you are under a lot of stress, which makes you more susceptible to making a decision without maybe taking the time to weigh all of your options. So people just need to at least have that confidence and that affirmation that, hey, it's okay to seek out other options, make an informed decision.
Yeah, and I would also add to that, most of the time when you hear the word misinformation or disinformation, you're probably onto something, especially when it comes to healthcare, right? I mean, how many times did we hear that during COVID? We were mocked, we were ostracized, people were forced or coerced into taking these vaccines. Lo and behold, the conspiracy theorists were right again, by the way, and now we're still seeing the ramifications from that, right? It, we laugh, but it's 100% true. It really, really is, and we've been able to help so many people that have come to us and said, "Look, I had to take the vaccine because of my job. I'm the sole breadwinner for my family. I had no choice." We're trying to find active ways to help people rid themselves of things like spike protein from their body. I mean, Dr. McCullough has talked about spike protein, I think, with you extensively. He is the world's, probably brightest mind on the subject. He's treated and seen more patients than we can count. You can go get back to blood work if you're really concerned. You actually get a spike antibody test right now from LabCorp and see your spike protein levels in real time if you're actually worried about it. But this product that you have on the screen here, this has been one of our top selling products since day one, because so many people want to get this stuff out of their body. It's junk. It causes these catastrophic health outcomes if you let it accumulate. Think back to Damar Hamlin, right, on Monday Night Football. I mean, it happens over and over again. And now we're seeing the rise of these turbo cancers where your body just gets out of control with some of these getting integrated into your cells. So really, I see no reason why you as an American would not want to take a product like this if it can help protect you, or if you're exposed to somebody who got vaccinated. Look, there's always going to be Americans, though, and like my parents, right, who they've gotten their 8th booster and no one's going to tell them otherwise, right? But for the rest of us, we really can benefit from this. And, I feel really bad for the parents, especially, who had to make that hard decision for their kid because of school or whatever. But, please do something about it. Like, there are options here. And we have tons of literature that we post on our website too, to educate everyone on what's actually going on.
Well, and one thing that we continue to learn more about is not just how important blood health is to overall health, but also what kind of indicators you can find from blood health results. And I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Brian Johnson. He came off in his earlier years. You're nodding your head. I assume you at least have some general awareness. Yeah. He came off in his earlier years as a bit of a kook, and that's how I kind of looked at it too. I was like, well, this guy's just kind of a kook, but okay, he's not doing any harm to anybody, as far as I can tell. Now I'm looking at Brian Johnson and I'm saying, well, he might be a kook, but I think he's onto something. And I think that not only is he onto something here, I think that the work he's doing is extremely informative. And that's one of the things that we've discovered, I think, through his work, is how important blood health is, and then how important the indicators of your blood health can be towards your overall general health. And it's like, if you're not doing anything to think about your blood health, I mean, how many people even think about that? How healthy is your blood? I don't know, probably not too many. But if you're not thinking about that, there's a whole other list of issues that you might have to deal with. For men, you think about heart problems, cardiovascular problems. It all starts with blood health.
It absolutely does. And Brian Johnson, for those who don't know, is effectively a professional guinea pig. I think his goal is to live to 150.
Well, he says he wants to live forever, whatever that means.
We'll go with forever. But look, he's right about one thing, and that is, I think all of us would give a whole lot for even 10 more years of good health, right? I mean, there's no point, in my opinion, in growing old if you're, wheelchair bound or bed bound and not able to actually enjoy life. So I think he's doing the right things, and he's actually actively testing all of these things that we've been told, for a long time have positive correlations with health. And look, to your point, the best signal that you can actually get for your overall health is going to be from a blood draw. And that can be measured in a variety of ways. They can even measure things like biological age if you order a DNA methylation test. All of these things are very important to know and monitor. And if you're doing it periodically, you actually see trends over time. And that's when you can actually intervene and start making changes to your own lifestyle to improve certain markers that may not be trending in the direction you like.
I'm glad that we're both at least Brian Johnson work respecters. I think there's a lot of people that still need to at least make the hurdle that he's not just a complete lunatic, and maybe there's something worthwhile there. That's kind of been my personal experience watching what he's doing. Another big indicator though is gut health. Another big indicator is gut health. And when you think about gut health, naturally we think about diet. We think about the things that we're eating. And we think about digestion as well, and that is right on. But there's one thing that people don't associate with gut health, and it deserves a lot of attention, and that's oral health. A lot of people are not making these connections when they should be. And I saw that Dr. Peter McCullough actually shared this story. You shared it as well. Xylitol and the gateway microbiome. Of course, your gut health, it's all about your microbiome. That's why they talk about going with your gut. It's that ancient knowledge passed down through your lineage, quite frankly. But he was talking about xylitol and the gateway microbiome. Now, I don't know if the wellness company is, if you want to break news twice on this show with another product, but it does seem that we're starting to learn more how it's a connection between oral health and gut health, and then gut health that can drive the rest of the body's health.
Yeah, the microbiome really had a day in its sun maybe 10 years ago with a company called Ubiome. It turns out they were kind of fudging their microbiome results, but the theory behind what they were trying to do is sound. I think the microbiome is one of the next great frontiers in medicine. I mean, you and I effectively have a an Amazon forest of other organisms living in our body that serve very critical roles when it comes to digestion and immune defense. But those can get all out of whack, right? It's highly dependent on what you eat. It's highly dependent on fitness and other lifestyle choices you make. Even things like antibiotics. I'm sure you might have heard after you take antibiotics, it's good to take a probiotic, right? Because antibiotics actually wipe out some of your gut microbiome as they wipe out other, viruses and illnesses within your body.
So you wipe out the good bacteria with the bad bacteria.
It kills indiscriminately, correct. So we really need to be getting more clued into the microbiome. You're right; it starts in the mouth, and Dr. McCullough talks extensively about when you're sick, you feel symptoms on really day 3 or 4 of an illness. Day 1, 2, and 3, it's in your sinuses incubating, right? And we practice hygiene every day. We take a shower, we brush our teeth twice a day. We don't do anything for our sinuses, zero. So we came out with a product with Dr. McCullough that has xylitol, which is actually a ingredient that was proven by another company called Clear to help wipe out the COVID virus. Now, of course, what did the FDA do? They sued Clear when Clear released that data. Clear eventually won, by the way, in court. But we partnered with Clear to come up with our own version of that product. And look, I use it twice a day, morning and when I go to bed. I just, 2 sprays in the nostril, clears me out, doesn't have any of those kind of nasty, unpleasant sensations like something like iodine would. But I haven't gotten sick in a year.
I like that taste.
The iodine?
Yeah, it tastes like electricity in my mouth. I don't know. It's weird. I'm weird like that.
Maybe it's an acquired taste, Owen. But
yes, yeah.
I'm
the weird one. I'm the weird one. I accept.
But it really does make sense, though, right? Like flushing out your nasal cavities and your sinus on a daily basis, once or twice a day, that's going to eliminate the chances that something actually is able to hold on in there and incubate and infect the rest of your body. And that's why it's so important, right?
Well, that was Dr. McCullough. Really, that was kind of his big breakthrough. I think when we were going through the first stages of learning about COVID and how people were getting it and what was making them sick and what was effective in treating it and what wasn't, that was kind of his big breakthrough, was attacking it right at the site. And I guess ultimately that led to the wellness company saying, hey, let's look for something more generic to attack whatever might be going on right at the site. I'm assuming you're talking about the immune defense nasal and throat sprays. Is that what you were referring to?
That's exactly what I was referring to. Yeah, and look, I remember during COVID, I got kicked out of an HEB once, between you and me
Only
in Katy,
once.
Texas.
Only once.
Only once, yeah. Well, I wasn't wearing my mask, Owen. I know I wasn't wearing my
Well,
mask.
yeah.
But I would go to the store and I would just carry that with me all day long. When people were coughing, I'd go in the store. If I'm around people, I'd get in the car, spray its nostril, good to go. And I never got sick. So what did that tell you?
Yeah, well, building your immune system is everything. And I say this with a lot of the doctors when we get to this conversation. I could understand. I could understand if you didn't have faith in your immune system and you got sick like that, and you were told by the news every day that it's the deadliest virus ever. I can understand how you might end up at a hospital and then on a ventilator and then, God knows what else. Rest in peace for many of those people. But I can understand if you didn't have that faith in your immune system. That's kind of what started that chain reaction in my eyes. Was people just didn't have the faith in their immune system. It's like, yeah, they got hit with the propaganda and everything else. But if you have faith in your immune system, I feel like it stops right there. And I guess that's kind of an analogy for the entire thing, right? It's like if you do have a strong immune system, that's where everything stops. So when I got sick, and it was the sickest I'd been in years. I don't know if I've been that sick since like I had mono in high school or something. But I can understand if I didn't have faith in my immune system and I was sick like that for a couple of days, thinking, yeah, maybe this is bad, I need to go to a hospital. But that's why you got to have your immune system strong, and you got to take the right steps to build that and have that confidence.
I'd argue that you have no choice but to be confident in your immune system, Owen. I mean, we were told during COVID, natural immunity doesn't exist. Like that's the most, talk about disinformation. That's the most anti-scientific thing ever, right? We were designed, our God-given immune systems have protected us for thousands of years from these diseases. And guess what? If you got sick, you would not get that disease again because your body would build a tolerance to it. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, when Mitch down the street, when I was 6 years old, got chicken pox, my mom sent me over to Mitch's house to play with Mitch because she wanted me to get chicken pox.
Party. We had a chicken pox party.
Right? I mean, there's actually a lot of science behind that because they know that if you get... That? No, of course not. They vaccinate for it.
That is so crazy because it was common. I don't know. I might have been maybe we were kind of amongst the last generation to do that. I'm 36 years old, but I remember actually because what happened was we had some neighbors where I was the same age as their daughter, and then my sister was the same age of their younger twin boys, and I think they all got chicken pox before us. And so then they sent me and their daughter over there to catch chicken pox. And then we had it a week later for a week or whatever. And then it was over. I don't hear about that anymore. Are they done? Are the chicken pox?
Yeah, that's over right now. They're trying to just, again, over vaccinate the children here and ignore the principles of natural immunity. Here's another great example, not involving humans. So maybe you've seen the stories over the past couple of years about all of these poultry flocks that have been culled because of the bird flu. Yeah. I think Dr. McCullough has covered extensively. It's a shocking number. We're talking tens and tens of millions of birds in America. They find one farm that has one chicken that's infected, and they cull the whole flock. Again, follow the money. Farmers are actually paid more to kill their chickens by the USDA with taxpayer money than they are to continue to raise them and bring them to the market. Separate issue, but we're not actually helping anything when it regards to bird flu transmission because none of these chickens actually survive to have natural immunity, right? If you get a flock infected, yeah, some birds are going to die, but the birds that make it, those birds aren't going to get sick again. And by the way, the eggs that they lay and the chicks that hatch, those birds also won't get sick again, right? But we're completely going
Don't we call
around
that
that whole
herd
natural
immunity?
process.
I think we call that herd immunity.
That would be called herd immunity, correct?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? And that story too, and that's why egg prices went up and everything else. And you know what's crazy? And this is just an aside. And look, folks, if you like eating fast food, I don't suggest it, to each their own. But when you actually look at some of these documentaries, what the craziest part about that to me, Peter, was they will take a chicken that is like rotted, and they will still find a way to make that chicken servable. Whatever they got to do, they'll just
Oh,
chop it
chicken
up.
nuggets.
Yeah, whatever they got to do. I mean, folks, like rotted chickens. I mean, like chickens that look like you wouldn't even think about it, and they'll find a way to get that chicken into the meal. But once this virus, the bird flu came around, they would cull entire farms of chicken, and they would have no problem with it. So it's just the lack of consistency as far as that approach was a major eye opener for me. That was like, something else is afoot here, because I've seen the type of chickens they're willing to serve in your fast food meal. I think something else is going on here.
Yeah, it's frankly horrifying, and the whole bird flu experience just shows us again it's the economics that are driving these decisions, nothing to do with the actual science about what's best for biological health. But look, you said flu, right? I know you wanted to talk about that, so you got your bingo card out because the flu is H3N1. So that's what has been going around this year, and I think you mentioned at
So
the
they're saying
start,
the
Owen.
bird flu. What you're saying is the bird flu is the flu that they're claiming is going around.
It's closely related. There have been more direct bird flu deaths, and again, there's been a couple this year. There's been a couple every year. No need to be that worried about it. But this new H3N2 variant that they have, you know, so you know, they've done some great branding with that as the new super flu of the year. It's not a bird flu, but it's an offshoot of influenza. That's a particularly nasty strain. Guess what? Flu shots not effective. Do you know how the flu shots are actually designed, Owen?
Oh yes, we talk about this every day. We do this show. How they're basically, by the time you get the flu shot, folks, it's 2 seasons late. It's two
Yeah,
seasons old.
it's you would probably be just as successful if you just picked flu strains and threw darts at the dartboard to pick what the shot
It'd
goes
be
against.
even worse.
Because
Actually, here's the analogy. It'd be like last night the Patriots and the Ravens played a game, or who's playing tonight? Okay, we got a Monday night football game tonight. It'd be like if I gave you a ticket to a Monday night football game in 2023. It'd be like if I came up to you and I said, "Here's a ticket for Monday night football." And you said, "Wow, Monday night football. This is going to be great. I'm going to take the friends and family." And then you look down at the ticket and it says, "Wait a second. This is 2023. This is a 2-year-old ticket. This ticket is no good for this game." That's basically the flu shot they're giving you. It's 2 years old. It's not going to get you in the game.
they are literally guessing, blind guesses at what the dominant flu strain will be for any given year, manufacturing it in the late winter so that it's ready for distribution in the fall. And by that time, they've pretty much all but missed the mark. Even the CDC's own data, when you go to the CDC, you type into Google CDC flu shot effectiveness, they have a chart. I don't think the chart ever gets above 50%. Most years it's down in the 30s or lower, right? And that's just looking at, by the way, whether or not they guessed properly. That actually isn't the effectiveness of it keeping you safe, which that data is horrific. There's been a ton of studies that have been censored, and actually doctors have lost their jobs for publishing these studies. Imagine that, back to your point about censorship. Tons of studies that show that there's actually negative efficacy for the flu shot, meaning if you get a flu shot, you're more likely to get very sick by the flu.
Every time.
It makes no sense.
It's madness. It is absolute, complete madness. One other thing here. We got a little more time with you. One thing that is becoming a heavy awareness factor, and I think that we're learning a lot about it. Maybe we don't understand everything quite yet, but we do understand there's an issue here. And that is microplastics. Microplastics. Now, getting tested for microplastics is a little, that's a little more niche than, say, going to get blood drawn or work like that. I did get a microplastics test. I was fortunate enough to have a very low number, and yet they're still there. And this is somebody who's been trying really hard since the microplastics phenomenon started becoming mainstream a couple years ago, switching everything to glass. trying not to eat any food that's served in plastic. I'm not perfect, folks. Nobody's perfect. But you try to do your best. And even me, who tries as hard as I can, even I had a low number of microplastics when I was tested. So it's like the results came in and they were like, look, for all the results we see, you're definitely amongst the best. But yeah, okay, there's still something there if you're shooting for perfection. What do we know about microplastics and how they end up in our system? And is it really a big cause for alarm? Do we understand it fully yet? Is it time to start making a bigger situation out of this? Or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a spicy issue on social media because people don't know if it's true or not. First of all, so let's start there. Um, Actually, I don't talk about this often. I don't know if I talk about it ever, but I know that microplastics are a major problem, and I have 100% certainty in that. And I know that, Owen, because I spent the first 5 years of my career working for the biggest manufacturer of uh, BPS and BPA, which are the primary microplastic culprits in the United States. It was a former GE Plastics company, and every year, what did we do? We had a research and development arm that would actually fund studies to try to disprove microplastics, and it was not very convincing. BPA is known as an endocrine disruptor. It actually will disrupt the body's ability to produce certain hormones, and that's just one type of microplastics. The problem with plastics is that they degrade over time, right? It's not like something that's metal that's going to stay metal. There's not going to be flakes or chips. Microplastics, any sort of mechanical force, like, hey, you're using a cutting board, any sort of heat, these will all cause pieces of plastic to essentially dissolve or chip off and get into whatever you're using. It's just a fact. It's really, really basic physics. And those things have effects on your body, most notably in the hormone segment. And look, you've seen the graphs about men's testosterone level in the United States. Every year, it's going down by about 1% population wide. I'm not just talking about as we age. I'm saying if you look at a 35-year-old today and a 35-year-old in the year 2000, our testosterone level is about 25% less. And that trend just keeps going. And I think microplastics are a primary driver of that. So I mentioned things like the cutting board. So anytime you have mechanical force that's kind of like rubbing on plastics that involves food that you eat. We wear a lot of clothings that are made with plastics, right? You know, how many girls are clad head to toe in Lululemon nowadays, right? That's plastic. Paper cups, one of the worst offenders that people don't think about. They're all lined with plastic. That's how the paper doesn't just dissolve in the liquid. Things like that really cause big issues. And that's not anything to say, those, black recycled plastic heating bowls that your, TV dinners come in that you pull out of the freezer. So really, it does benefit on a wide variety of levels to just get this crap out of your life. Get something that's more permanent. Use a ceramic mug. Get a aluminum travel mug for your coffee. There's so many really small, easy ways to get rid of microplastics. It's really an avoidable thing. And I think Americans should all really take a close look at kind of what they're putting on their holiday table this year.
Yeah. And I think, too, just from a general health practice for the individual listening to this, a lot of these things might sound minute or trivial, or maybe, as you were saying, they like to say woo woo. I just say this, be the science yourself. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised at how just a little different decision you might make. Like, you know what? I'm going to do my best to keep microplastics out of my life. You'd be surprised 90 days later, 180 days later, a couple of years later, you might be surprised at the wide difference that you have, that wide margin. You think it's not that big of a deal. After a couple months, a couple years, you might figure out it's actually a really big deal. And maybe that explains why there's so many people having these health problems, right? Because they think it's just a minor thing. They're not taking the time to understand it. They're not making the effort to avoid these things. Next thing you know, you got a chronic disease. Next thing you know, you're in the doctor's office once a month. Next thing you know, you're having some sort of an endocrine disruption issue, a thyroid issue, all kinds of things that arise. So yeah, it takes effort. But this is why we love the Wellness Company. This is why we partnered with you guys to do this show. Ask the Doctor, brought to you by the Wellness Company. Folks, remember twc.health/Owen, twc.health/Owen. Anything you get there, 10% off. And I want to make sure we mentioned a lot of this stuff, but to me, folks, this is a no-brainer. If you don't have a medical kit in your home, please do something about that. Make sure you have a medical emergency kit in your home. It's just like emergency food. You want to be sure if there's an emergency, you have something right there on the spot to address it. So many different options at twc.health/Owen. Use promo code Owen for 10% off. I want to give a shout out. Jet Shanghai says, loves the new show. Loves the new show. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Jet. We wade into the comment section every once in a while. It just gets a little Wild West over there. So we try to keep the conversation focused here. Well, we're up against the Christmas vacation here. Any final words, Peter, as we head into Christmas and the new year for our audience?
Yeah, I think your plug there for the medical emergency kit, I think was great. I have one, sometimes in multiple rooms in my house and in my car. And look, once you have it and once you use it once, you're going to be sold. We talked about reducing healthcare costs. One kit's going to last you so long, and it's going to keep you from that $500 urgent care visit, which, by the way, never happens at a convenient time. I mean, it's a financial investment as much as it is a health investment, because you can treat on the spot whenever you need it. There's a 30-page guidebook, 8 different prescription meds that are all written in your name. We have our own network of doctors. It's all private. We have our own pharmacy. This is completely private. It's disconnected from the mainstream healthcare system, cash pay only. And, we've had so many people that have written to us saying that these things literally save their lives.
Well, and that's the thing. When you take care of your health, you can extend your life. And that's why when I look at the Brian Johnson, you called him the human guinea pig. It's very fair way, very, very fair way to put it. But it's true. It's like when you take control of your own health, you will obviously get an improvement, just like anything else in life. When you work at something and you put in the time and effort, you will get an improvement. And it's the team of doctors and Peter here at the Wellness Company that makes it a lot easier on you folks. They give you the alternatives. They give you the information. That's why I love these shows. Peter, we appreciate your time today. Merry Christmas to you and your family. Happy New Year to the entire Wellness Company. We won't be hearing from you guys again until next year. But until then, God bless and Godspeed, and appreciate your time today, Peter.
Merry Christmas, Owen.